First of all, I spoke to my husband and my children. We talked a massive amount because I've got 2 boys at the time, and I didn't know how they would react to having a little one coming and going all the time. And then I talked to my immediate family, parents and things that were about at the time. And then we got in touch with the shop. Well, it wasn't the shop at the time. And I had an information pack. But in the meantime, I actually knew a local lady that was a foster carer, and I talked to her until she was sick of seeing me, because I got so many questions that I really wanted to ask about different things, and they were burning and I needed them answered. So I talked to her, and she did really well, and she gave me lots of answers. From there, we were called in for an interview, which went okay. We still wanted to foster. The more I heard, the more I wanted to do it. I was still working at the time. From there, we were put forward for training. We did a 6-day training over at Pipe's at the time, which I found really good and helpful. We did lots of scenarios, lots of role playing, and we met other people there that were interested as well, and which we still keep in touch with after all these years. And that answered quite a lot of things as well. From there we did a home study, which seemed to take forever. Went into lots of questions, lots of background, and how we got on with family and things like that. After that, what happened after that? We went to, we had to have medicals done to make sure we were fit and well with our own GP, and we had CRBs checked, which just to make sure that we hadn't got any criminal records for anything. From there we went to panel. We didn't actually go to panel, but I know these days you can go to panel when your case is heard, and we were approved from there. Panel is it's a group of about 12 people. There's education people, there's foster carers, there's people that have been in care. I'm trying to think who else is there. There's quite a few people. Social workers are there, and they have everything from your home study collated into like one piece, which they all read beforehand. They go through that, and then they decide if you would be a good candidate. So whether you're approved from there. After we'd been approved, it wasn't very long before we were rang up and we were allocated a link worker, which is our support social worker. And she came out and introduced herself, and we went through what we felt that we could manage at home. It wasn't long after that we had a phone call, which was for a relinquished baby, which was really nice for our first placement. And they give you the briefest of handing over, because they can only give you what they know about the child, first of all. And we accepted, and the little baby was placed with us within the hour, which was quite shocking. But yeah, it's all good. We've been fostering for 13 years, and over those 13 years we've had 32 children in our care. Some have stayed for a few days, some have stayed a few months, some have stayed a few years. But yes, support I've received has been really good actually. I've always had a link worker who has been there at the end of the phone or an email. She makes regular visits to the house, and if I do have any problems, I know she's there to help me out. She also attends meetings and things with me, which is a big help because it can be quite scary, some of the meetings. When a child is placed, you have a meeting within 24 hours just to fill in any gaps that you haven't got about the child that they can find out. We usually then have a meeting, a review meeting within 3 months of the child being placed, which again just goes over everything, what's going on, and they organise a care plan of how things are going to happen. We meet with parents, social workers, anybody involved really with a child. If there's medical services involved, they'll be there, school will be there. Anybody really that's, this child is involved with. Police are there if the police are involved. We have what's called a cell group, which is in our local area, which is led by 2 social workers, and it's basically all the foster carers in that area. Again, we have speakers in, we can talk things over. If you didn't want to talk to your link worker about anything that's not burning question, or if you're having a problem, they'll all give you ideas of how they manage things, and it's a good support network. Okay, there's also BFCA, which you'll become a member of once approved. They do lots of training, lots of topics. They also do a buddy scheme for new carers, which is really nice to know somebody's out there when you first start being a foster carer. They do day trips out as well, and you have a pamphlet, leaflet, booklet, whatever you call it, every few months to tell you what's going on within the departments as well, which is good. I'm approved for 3 children, so it could be anything at any one time. Both me and my husband are at home, but we're both full-time foster carers. No child ailment frightens us, or what can I say? There's always help out there. Whatever the medical problem is, whatever the ability is, there is always somebody out there that will help you. Actually, it's never a problem. I had a little Polish girl once, and I knew nothing. So I trawled the internet, as you do, and I found the local Polish centre, and I give them a ring just to get a few words, because she didn't speak English either. And they were absolutely fantastic. They came down and saw me, they bought me some books, they bought me some food for the little girl, and they told me about their religion and how they practice things, and which was really helpful, and I had such an insight, which was really helpful. But yes, I find out off the internet, or I find somebody that knows. Parents are a good source.
Right, I was childminding at the time, and I went and put an advertisement in the newspaper newsagent's window, and I noticed there was a card in there asking if you thought you could look after a child with special needs, and it gave a number, and basically I found that number, went to the information meeting, and that was 34 years ago, and that's what made me do it. Yeah.
And you, Johnny?
Okay, I was an auxiliary nurse for 17 years. I had a lady on the ward that little child needed to go into foster care because she got nobody at home. I actually cared for the child on the ward until a foster carer came to pick the child up with a social worker, and we were talking, and I thought, yes, I like that. I think I could do that. So I found out more about it, and I went for it. So how long have you been fostering?
I've been fostering for about 34 years now. Yeah.
Okay.
I've fostered complex care children at first for about 28 years. And then I transferred over to temporary. How long have you been fostering?
13 years now. Yeah, I was an auxiliary nurse before, and I got interested when we had a lady on the ward that little one needed to go into foster care because there was nobody else to care for this little one. I cared and looked after this child until a foster carer came with a social worker, and while they were filling in forms I got to know what a foster carer was and what they did, and I really thought I'd like to do that. So I looked into it. I was a bit unsure at first because I'd got an older lad who was on the autistic spectrum. Didn't know how he would cope, manage with it, but never looked back. He's been fantastic.
That's good.
Yeah.
And is it temporary that you foster?
Yeah, we're temporary. I'm approved for 3 children, 0 to 5. Yeah.
Well, I've still got a young man in my care. He's 24. I've had him since he was 2 years old. He's got Fragile X syndrome, learning difficulties. So yeah, I suppose my forte is that he's special needs, but I believe all children have got special needs.
Yes.
They come into care.
Yeah, we've had a few that have had medical problems. We had a little lad who's had exomphalus, where his tummy was coming out. Lots of hospital visits. You know, they know us on first name terms. The only thing we didn't get was a parking space. Yeah, lots of input from...
I think a lot of people sort of look at special needs and it frightens them.
Yeah.
But I think once you get to know the children and look at the children and not the special needs, you see the whole thing then, and the special needs becomes sort of afterwards.
Yeah, the child first.
Yeah, the child comes first.
There's so much out there though to help and support you.
Absolutely.
Even so, more so these days, isn't there?
Paediatricians, counsellors, they're all there to help, so... Yeah.
Yeah, we've had physio equipment and all sorts, special beds and things in the house.
It's quite a rewarding thing as well.
Oh gosh, yes.
Looking after children with special needs.
Yeah.
Especially when they start doing things that the paediatrician has told you that they'll never do, but because of the input that you've given them, they start doing things, and paediatricians are sort of looking there and thinking, oh my God. Yeah. You know, you never believed that that child would do that. But with the input and the consistency and the love and the patience, these children, they give a lot back.
Oh yeah. Every little milestone is a great big huge one.
It is. Well, let's say for instance the young man that I've got now, who's 24, his prognosis was that he would never be able to be independent, never be able to work. He now does go out to work. He's semi-independent, and I think that's wonderful, because to be told that your child will never be able to do anything and they start doing the things, I mean, what more reward do you want than that? I also had a little girl that had got bulbar palsy, which is the swallowing reflex. She couldn't swallow. We had her out of hospital, and what she used to do, to keep her mouth clean, they used to tell us to let her sort of, as if she was drinking, but keep a bib there because she'll dribble it out. Over time, my husband noticed that she was watching him eat, and actually watching his throat. So he put her hand on his throat so she could feel how he was swallowing. And then he'd give her a sip of water and put her hand on her throat and told her to do the same to make that same feeling. To cut a long story short, over time, she did start swallowing, and a child that had got a gastrostomy, where you fed through a tube in the tummy, was able to eat after about, I'd say it took about 3 months of baby food and then sort of pureed semi-food. And the paediatrician actually didn't believe that this child was eating, and came out and watched her eat. And what he said was, with how much that we had trained her and taught her how to eat, the part of her brain that was giving her the bulbar palsy, another part had taken over. So it can happen, miracles can happen.
I believe it.
You know, and you've got a paediatrician that was absolutely dumbfounded. So foster carers can make a great difference to children with special needs. And when you're told that your work, excuse me, that you have put into that child has enabled her to eat, you know, how good does that make you feel?
Wonderful feeling, huh?
Absolutely. Job well done.
Yeah. I'll say we had a little 7-month-old little girl who came, who'd been left in a rock tot. Everything was done in the rock tot. She was fed in there. She was never cuddled or handled or touched. And her prognosis at such a young age was that she wouldn't be able to do much things for herself, but through lots of physio, OT, occupational therapy, input and everything, and daily physio with us, you know, she is walking and she's doing fantastic. Even now, her gait's not so good, but, you know, she still has her boots on, but she's doing really, really well. Yeah.
A lot of these children that come into care have got a lack of stimulation.
Yeah.
And if you put that input into the child, they may not be able to reach the same goals as a child without a disability, but they'll be able to reach their goal.
Yeah.
So every child has got a goal, no matter, you know, how complex their care is. Every child's got a right to be stimulated and to be encouraged to reach whatever goal that they can get to. And I think it's foster carers that put in that time and patience and working with the paediatricians and the specialists.
Yeah.
And that's the reward you get back from looking after these children.
Oh, it's a lovely feeling, really lovely, and I feel so proud, definitely proud.
Well, I think you've got two lots of feelings. You've got the sadness that you would feel of any child coming to stop with you, moving on because you're going to miss them. But you've got that sort of well done feeling that you have enabled maybe a birth family because of the work that you have put in with the child, and sometimes taught the birth family how to do the physio, how to stimulate the child. That has enabled that child to go back to a birth family. And that really is where all our children need to be, if it's possible. So, yeah, you feel good.
I must say, every time a child's moved on, I do have a little tear. It's only natural. You've cared and loved and cherished that child for the amount of time that they've been with you, and they've been part of your family. And if I didn't get upset, I think it's time that I shouldn't be doing it. I'm sure you do as well, don't you?
I do, and I think the way I look at it is that I've enabled that child. I've done my bit for that child while they're in my care, and hopefully I've enabled that child to move on to their long-term care plan, albeit with birth, family or adoption. And we have to remember that there's so many children in care that the work that you've done with this child, yes, you're going to miss the child, but there are other children there that need that care as well. So when one door closes, another one opens. So you will then have another child come into your care that may have different needs. So it's your input is needed, not just for that child, but for lots of different children. So yeah, it can be sad, but it's happy as well.
You soon refocus, don't you? And,
yes.
And look forward.
You don't have time, really.
No, you don't.
Support networks are really important, especially backup carers. Backup carers can really help you out. For instance, some years ago, my husband was diagnosed with bowel cancer. I'd got children in place, and because I'd got a good support network and backup carers, those children were able to remain in my home while I visited my husband or was at the hospital. Those support network people, i.e. backup carer, my sister, family members, came into the house and were able to give the children the tea, fetch them from school, get them ready for bed. So their routine remained pretty consistent. Just as my own children, being in my home, would have had to put up with me going to the hospital. The foster children had the same thing, so they didn't have to move out while I was going through a crisis. I'd got the support there to help me deal with the crisis. Again, people say to me, how do you cope with children coming and going? Do you ever feel like you want to give up? There was a time when I lost my little boy that I adopted that I felt that I couldn't do it anymore. My link worker at the time felt that 30 years of fostering was not going to be thrown away through grief, and encouraged me to go into temporary foster care. And the first child that was placed with me was a five-hour-old little baby that needed that 24/7 care like my little boy did. So the couple of months before he came, where I was feeling life wasn't worth living, I was going through a really bad grieving process. Believe it or not, this little baby, this little 5-hour-old baby, brought me back to life. So there are ups and downs in fostering. It's not an easy job, but there's children there that need looking after, and sometimes they help you through your crisis. So, before you even consider going to an information meeting, I think the first thing you need to do, if you're thinking of fostering, is to talk to your family, your children, and to see what support network you've got. For instance, if you're fostering and one of your own children perhaps have an accident at school, you have to go to the school or go to the hospital. If you've got a neighbour that you can trust or a family member that can be there for your foster child if they come home on transport or need picking up from school, knowing that you've got that help if you need it is extremely important and can help you out in a crisis even, because life isn't smooth going, and being a foster carer doesn't mean that you're never going to need help. In fact, you may need that help more so than in a normal everyday family. So a support network, backup carers, extremely important and can be your lifeline. So you need to, in my opinion, look at who could help you. So before you go to that information meeting, talking to your family, talking to your extended family members, friends, and finding out who would be prepared to support you.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't sure how my boys would cope with having other little children in. So we started off with one sort of baby placement, and they absolutely loved it. They thrived with it. They were, because before I used to work nights and my husband used to work in the week, so we were like ships in the night, coming and going. So we actually had a lot more time with the family and to be able to do things together, which was really a good benefit for them as well. But do you know, it's just made them more world-wise, I think, of what's going on in this world.
In my case, I had only got one child when I became a foster carer. So my other children were actually born into fostering and grew up with it. So it's been part of their life from day one. And still to this day, I've got my sons saying that they would like to become foster carers at some point, and their partners and wives. I've got a sister who fosters, I've got a brother who fosters, both of whom I recruited, and they've been fostering now for over 20 years. So I've got a great support network, which is quite important. And the family are a fostering family. When we go on holidays, it's all the foster children are sort of foster cousins, if you like. They all see themselves as one big happy family.
Same like too. They just take the comings and goings as normal. You know, they don't get upset as long as they've said goodbye in the morning.
Yeah.
They're quite happy to have gone off to school or college or wherever they've gone, and they just get on with it, and they come home there's somebody else there, which is...
Yeah, I have had times that my sons have got really upset when children have gone. And we've had to sit down and sort of... And they have come to us and said, "Oh, Mum, why can't you adopt him? Why can't you adopt him?" And we've had to sit down and say, look, think of all the children that are in care or needing foster carers. You can only adopt so many children. What happens to the others? You can't adopt every child that comes in care. It's up to us to prepare them for their long-term care plan. So, yes, it's going to be sad, but it's going to be happy as well, because we have been part of their long-term plans to enable them to move on. I've actually got a sibling group in place now that are long-term, and have done before many times. And it's lovely to get to see the siblings able to stay together. It's really, really important. I mean, they've had the upheaval of coming away from their birth families. To be split up is very, very difficult. And I think being together helps them accept the fact that they are away from birth family, and being together gives them that little bit of security. So I believe it's important to keep the siblings together if that's at all possible. And we need foster carers with space to accommodate sibling groups. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had sibling groups, and I always seem to find that the oldest one is always trying to care for the younger ones. Yeah, trying to take that mummy and daddy role. Mm. Yeah, and they don't like to be split up or be out of each other's sight for long, do they?
No. Yeah, you generally when siblings come into place, as you say, the older one tends to be the primary carer, and sometimes it's difficult for them to let go. So it's difficult for them not to butt in when you are trying to care for their younger siblings. But as time goes on, it's nice to see that they actually relinquish that role, because they actually assess you as well to see if you're able to care for their siblings, and over time they actually relinquish the role of primary carer and get on with their lives. I would encourage them to get as much information as they can and to attend information meetings. Discuss it with members of the family.
Definitely discuss with the family.
Look at what a support network they would have. Discuss it with friends, extended family, and find out whether they would be prepared to give their support. Because one of the things you do need if you become a foster carer is a good support network. And it is important that your family members are in agreement, especially direct family members, children, perhaps your mother, your father, because they may become foster grandparents and be able to help you out at some point. So yeah, as much information as you can from the sources, you know, fostering meetings, and then to talk to family and friends.
Well, you need a bit of childcare knowledge, I think, and you need lots of time, and it's a commitment. It is a big commitment, isn't it?
Patience, understanding.
Yeah, patience.
Yeah.
I still have a lot of support from the child centres, where all the physios are based and the OTs are based, and in-house support as well. I've had.
Because I first went into special needs, complex care. I did get medical training, so went into the hospital. If they placed a child that was NG fed, nasogastric tube fed, which is a tube through into the tummy, they wouldn't just place that child with you. You would go to the hospital and you would get training from a nurse, how to feed the tube down, how to test the tube before you fed the child, and you would have to be confident with that before a child was placed with you. So no child's going to be placed with you that has got medical needs that you will not be trained in first.
No, I did an NG feed not long ago, and I spent, it must have been about 8 days going back and forth to the hospital to be taught how to do everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've got a little one on CPAP as well now, and we had to stop in and make sure we knew everything, what was going on. Yeah, you're not just put out there at all.
It isn't just medical intervention as well with special needs. It's children that may be on the autistic spectrum, that may have learning difficulties, that may have mobility issues. So you may be taught how to do the physio, what stimulation the child needs. So it doesn't have to be medical if a child's got special needs, but if it is, then you will be asked, would you like training in this before you decide whether you think you could care for a child that's got a trachea or a gastrostomy or a tube feed or is on oxygen. So you're not just thrown in at the deep end, you are trained. With able-bodied older children that come into care, I'd say yes, there is a difference, because children that come into care at teenage years have often had abusive lives, so they've got issues. But I mean, mainly you go through the puberty years which you do with your own children. So that brings up issues. It can be stressful, but it depends what type of person you are as to whether you're able to cope with it. And I think a lot of these youngsters just need to know that you are there to support them, not to dictate to them, and to teach them how to open up and talk about their issues, and to let them know that you're there for them. So, and with the special needs, obviously, this young man now, he's part of our life. 22 years he's been with us, and he'll be there another 22 if we live that long. He's there with us for as long as he wants to be.